Well, hello again and welcome to this, the last of our series of talks during Generosity Week. And I'm sure everyone watching knows by now, but just in case not, my name's Dennis Fancett and I'm from the Generous Giving team at the Diocese of Newcastle. I guess we're all familiar with the parable of the Good Samaritan. Jesus tells the story to explain what it means to be a good neighbour. And within the parable are some wonderful examples of generosity. The Samaritan doesn't just give his money and possessions, he also gives his time, he stops, he's not too busy to help, and he allows his own schedule to be interrupted. And that's really the issue I want to focus on today. If a person needs help, or if someone just needs someone to talk to, would you or would I have the time? Or are we always too busy, always in a rush, never able to listen properly, to catch the tone or expression in someone's voice that indicates that there is still a problem, that everything is not okay? Now, the church I'm part of used to run a drop-in centre in our local high street where people would come if they needed help applying for benefits or creating CVs or looking for work, and church volunteers, including myself, would help them. Over the 9 years we ran that service, we actually had more than 20,000 different drop-in visits, mostly the same people, I should say, who came back every day, that they came in because they needed our help and support. Now, we also used another room in those premises as our kind of church office and church base. And I used to go to our weekly team meetings in that building, 10 o'clock once a week. And it was just a short 5-minute walk from where I lived down the other end of the high street. And yet, here's the thing. As time went on, I found virtually every time I walked up the high street, I would see one of our regular drop-in users who would want to chat for a bit, sometimes elated, they'd got a job interview, actually more often depressed and despondent, they'd received a rejection or a benefit decision hadn't gone their way, sometimes just to thank us for being there and helping them and asking why we gave up our time to volunteer. So I had a number of very interesting conversations, and once or twice getting to the point where I could invite someone to church on a Sunday. Well, you might think that was great, but the problem was I always arrived at our team meetings late, sometimes not till 10:15 or 10:20, and my excited excuse is, hey, I've just had a really good chat with so-and-so, I've just met someone else and I've invited her to church on Sunday. That's okay to start off with, but it didn't respect the others who had been sitting around waiting for me. So I began to realise that I intentionally needed to allow more time. Yes, it only took me 5 minutes to walk up the high street, but given I met someone virtually every single week, it dawned on me that I needed to allow an extra 15 minutes and just build that into my schedules. If the meeting started at 10 o'clock, I really needed to be leaving my home at 22:10. Then I got that spare 15 minutes available. Well, you might think that's okay for me, but I'm not running a drop-in service like that. People wouldn't recognise me if I walked along the street. But what other situations might you be in where people would simply want to talk? What about work, college, the school run, neighbours, people you might meet at the shops? Would you have time for a chat? And yesterday, I spoke about the words we might say to someone we might see at our church meeting on a Sunday. Let me tell you a story going back to when my wife and I first joined a largish church down in London many years back, and our daughter, a teenager at the time, she'd stopped going to church completely a few years previously. But when she found out we were joining this new church, she asked if she could come with us. Of course, we were delighted, but it wasn't easy for her. She was at the age when it wasn't cool to sit with your parents, but other people her age were perhaps a little bit slow to welcome her in and let her join their crowd. Well, one day we had a near disaster, actually. The speaker asked us all to find a person we knew and discuss something he just said. And our daughter froze. She had no one to speak to. She didn't want to just be talking to her parents. But an older lady, actually a retired teacher from her school, sitting right over the far side of the church, she just seemed to read the situation brilliantly. She got up, she came all the way over to our side just to talk to our daughter. And she didn't actually ask about what the speaker had just said. She just said, "Hey, how did you get on in your exams?" And our daughter became alive. It was a subject area she had in common with this lady. And she spoke excitedly about her choices and options and results for a few minutes until the service resumed. The embarrassment of having no one to speak to was over. You know, I'm not sure if our daughter would have continued coming with us to church if it hadn't been for that woman walking right across the hall that morning to speak to her. You see, it's not always what we have to say that counts. It's just being willing to say something, to see a situation, an awkwardness, a loneliness, and to be ready to step in. The Good Samaritan gave up his time to walk across the road. The retired teacher gave up her time to walk across the church. What will you do? What will I do? Today, in this final talk of Generosity Week, let's resolve not just to be generous with money and possessions, but with time too. Let's be there for anyone who might need us. Let's be the ears of Jesus, both today and every day. Thank you so much for listening to these talks during this week. I've really appreciated you being online. Thank you.